Right guys, it's going to be a video showing how to optimize debuffs and buffs within the game for solo play for Titan, Warlock and Hunter. Those who just want to see each individual class, skip to the time on the screen. Before that, I'm going to explain how a buff and a debuff works in this game. For new light players and for newish players who started to play this game, initially. For veteran players, just skip to the times. There isn't just obvious stuff in this video, there's some outliers that people might not know. So there's some extra information. But first we're going to cover the Warlock, but like I said, with the buffs and debuffs. So, when this game first came out, in the first couple of years, you could essentially stack a lot of buffs and debuffs together to get an insane multiplayer. That changed at one point, I can't remember exactly when, sometime after Escalation Protocol, I can't remember exactly when. They changed it because it got a little absurd, that you could only do one buff, one debuff. I think it was when Bubble came out, when Bubble Weapons of Light came back. Basically, whatever buffs is the highest overpowers the other buffs. So say you are in a raid team, so going away from solo play now. Say you're in a raid team and your teammate pops a bubble. The bubble is a 35% damage buff. The well is 25%. The bubble is going to overpower the well because it's a higher buff. You'll still get the benefit of the healing from the well and that, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's the numbers itself. You're just going to get the 35. They won't stack. Same with debuffs. A tether and a Hammer Strike from Sunbreaker Titan will not stack. They're two debuffs. You can only stack one buff, one debuff. Like I said, there's outlier with it. So that's the basics of it. For a Warlock, this isn't the 100% best setup for sword play, but you can use this setup for anything, any weapon that you want to use. So if I want to use Xenophage, you can do it. This will work for every weapon in the game, not just Guillotine. If I wanted to do a Lucent Blade Void hybrid build, it would be actually 10% higher than what I'm doing, but I'm not covering that on the Warlock because of how good and useful overall this one is. It's not the highest potential damage, but it's close. I'll cover the Lucent Blade though on the Hunter and the Titan, showing that. But going back to what we're doing, so we need to pick a good debuff and a good damage buff. So we've picked Well of Radiance, which is a 25% damage buff, so that's our good buff that we've got. Then we've got a debuff, now we can get it from various things in the game. We can even get it from an exotic shotgun called Tractor Cannon. But for the Warlock, it doesn't have many choices for debuffs. The Hunter does, the Titan does, but for the Warlock it's limited for debuffs. Now this helmet is an option, so it's called Felwinter's Helm, and it reads Arc, Solar and Void melee kills create a burst of energy that weakens nearby enemies, finishes and kills against more powerful enemies, increases the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. So this offers a 30% damage debuff by getting finishes melees. Now it says it changes depending on what's going on. So just to show you, I'm not going to talk about numbers in this. We've got 1384 there. Get a finisher. If I just do that again because that wasn't right. So 1384. This SMG is too powerful. Okay. Let me get the debuff going. 1799. So you can see that happening. Also the debuff only lasts 10 seconds on a minor, because that's a red bar. Now it says the more powerful the enemy, the stronger the thing. So we get it on an orange bar, it now lasts 15 seconds. It's still the same number, 30%, but the radius is larger. And it's even larger still on a yellow bar. And that's a 30% like debuff, like I said, every time. So that's for free. 15 seconds is insane because Tractor Cannon's only like 6 or 7. You can reapply it a lot, but 15 seconds of time is a huge thing. That's why this exotic at times can be really, really good. So that's explaining how Felwinter's Helm works. That's our debuff. We've got our buff via our super, but we can add to that via a cell called Power of Rasputin, which is the Season of Dawn mods. So what this states is, you gain a bonus to weapon damage against enemies that are near a Warmind cell. So this is not a buff or a debuff. It's I'm going to call it an additive. That's just the phrase I'm using for it, because it's adding to, it's stacking basically with the buff and the debuff, so we can have buff, debuff, and sell power of Rasputin. So this is something that doesn't work like anything else in the game. So we can stack all that together. As a solo player, this is really good. For team play, it'll be really good. But the set that we have is mainly Void, because it's all from Void. Another perk that we have on is Grasp of the Warmind, which makes the cell mobile, because we can pick it up and throw it at a boss that we want. Perfect to sword. Perfect to go from one room to the next. Say you want to generate a cell in one room to take to a boss to another, anywhere. The Whisper mission comes to mind, where you maybe generate a cell in one room, go to the next room, kill a knight by throwing a cell there, Xenophage, and just instant, one shot or whatever. There's loads of examples where this could be used. The fact that we can make it mobile is insane, so that's why I've got that on as well. We can't drop it, we can only throw it, and only throw it once as well. Then we've got Warmind's protection on, so you take reduced damage from enemies that are near Warmind cells. Again, perfect for swording what we're doing. So we throw it at a boss, we're going to get that reduced damage, kind of like Protective Light. Same thing, basically. No, it doesn't work exactly the same, but it's sort of like a passive buff to you. I've used it. You won't see it working so much because I'm in the tribute hall, but that's just something extra we've got on. It's all from the Void stuff. Okay, we've got global reach on to make a cell. You need a weapon to make a cell from the start. So any Icolos or Seraph, Icolos or the 7th Seraph weapons, any of those will work. I've got the Icolos on. Any weapon that you like, there's quite a lot of them. These work as well. Even the shotgun works, the machine gun if you've got it. A lot of things that work for this cell, so you need that on. And all this I'm going to show stacking together. So we're going to need 2 yellow bars, so we'll get these weak first. We've got one finishable, we'll get the other one weakish. The numbers are going to be inconsistent across all 3 characters because I'm coming in at different light levels. I understand that. It's not so much about the numbers, it's more visual. So, we get 13493 base sword. That's our base. We're going to do our well. We're going to get our cell. We're going to pick that up. Obviously it wasn't close enough, now he's lit up. Now he's lit up to tell us that. Then we get our debuff, our finisher. And then 24119. So, that's insane. That's a huge difference compared to what it was. And the cell's still up. The sword does not explode the cell. So that's what's really good about it. If it's a moving target, the cell's going to follow the target because it's stuck to the target. So to me, that's just insane. And it lasts for quite a lot. I did not time it, but if you were to pause the video and see how long it lasts for a good bit. So that's a good build. I didn't use Lucent Blade, which I could have done. That would have been 10% more on top of what we already had, because Lucent Blade's a 35% damage buff, Well's a 25. If we were to do Well, then do Lucent Blade with Charge of Light in there, which I'm going to do on the Titan and Hunter shown, then it will be a little more, but it's less damage because well, it lasts. Like say we didn't have our well, it would only be because we'd only be around to get a ×2, especially with all the mods that we have on. We don't have room for supercharge and all this stuff. So you're getting a ×2 Charge of Light, which means a 5-second keened buff each time, so 10 seconds maximum. So it's more for burst damage with the Lucent Blade, but it would have been a little higher than what we've done. But this can be used for any weapon, not just sword. I could have mountain topped, I could have used Xenophage, could have used anything like that. But I'll show more the Lucent Blade sort of build on the Titan and Hunter. So that was the set for the Warlock. So this is going to be on the Titan now, showing you 2 effective builds that you can be using with the buffs and debuffs, stacking them all together. So I'm going to show you 2 different builds. One's more burst damage style, one's more for end game content, the bubble one, whereas this is more burst damage sort of style of doing it. So we're on a Sunbreaker Titan top tree with Hammer Strike. While sprinting, use this melee ability to swing a blazing hammer that weakens enemies. That's the key word, debuff the weaken enemies. So you debuffing the boss or add whatever you're doing. So that's our debuff, which is the 30% damage debuff there. Then, as our buff, we've got Lucent Blade, which is a 35% damage buff. Whilst Keened is active, so you get that 5-second damage bonus when you do your heavy attack. You get that, and you get the increased charge rate as well when you stack a arc mod with it. So that's our buff and our debuff together. Then we've got the cells again. So this is a void / arc hybrid type build for the Season of Dawn mods. So we have Power of Rasputin, like on the Warlock, the 10% additive. It's not a buff or a debuff, it's the 10% extra, we'll call it that. Then we've got Grasp of the Warmind on, so we can make that cell mobile, as is our debuff. It's mobile, we can activate it wherever we want, wherever the boss is, and we can put that cell there as well. Then we've got Shield Break Charge, which is a means of getting the Lucent Blade to proc. That's our way. So depending on what you do in the situation, it can change the way you want to use the mod. There's loads of different mods to get Charge of Light. Just use one that's comfortable with the situation you're doing. Then we have Global Reach on to get a cell, like always. So we've got this auto rifle on, this carbine. That's all the stuff going together. So we'll show you how this is going to work. So we'll get our Charge of Light from this enemy here, just as convenient. One thing, I'll just show you the base damage. So 13,360. I'll get Charge of Light again. So that's 13,360 it's doing there. We'll show a light swing attack and then a heavy right after. Well, this is going to get our cell from the major. And we can pick up our cell. Then we go for Melting Point. That was 19,105 for the single swipe, and then obviously when we keened and stuff. Obviously if I hadn't destroyed that cell, it would have still been up, and I'd have been able to continue to do more damage to that ogre there. So the key thing with that is the sword does not destroy the cell. This is why it's nice to stick it, to a boss, especially a mobile boss, because that cell's stuck to that boss. And if you want to go and sword or do whatever you want to do, it's always there for that extra damage. It gels well with the Melting Point as well. Just overall. So that's a high burst damage. Bear in mind the Lucent Blade, like I said, it's only going to last for 10 seconds max on this style, because we haven't got room for supercharged, extra reserve, extra stacks and all that stuff. Not so much, because a lot of the slots are taken up by more the Void and the Arc anyways. So times 2, you're going to get the 10 seconds, but it's still a lot of damage, stacked with everything else. So that's that first burst damage sort of build. You can use an exotic as well by taking Grasp of the Warmind off. So if you're comfortable that you're going to get a cell close to a boss and you don't need to pick it up, that's fine. You can take it off, put on the exotic Peregrine Graves, and that gives you additional damage on top of what you're doing, because the airborne shoulder charge from the exotic, it's even more. So there's that option. This is more for endgame, doing it like this, stacking your buffs and debuffs. So we're on a bubble, which is a 35% damage buff. Okay, so that's a 35%. Then what we need to do is find a good debuff. So for this, we're using Tractor Cannon. Different to Divinity. Divinity is different, that's for team play. But for Tractor Cannon's a better weapon for solo play, because it lasts such a time that you can make use of it. You can use Divinity solo on champs and stuff like that, but that's not what this video is about, okay? So we're using Tractor Cannon for a debuff, Bubble for buff, and then Cell again. So same thing, we're not going to be utilising Lucent Blade though, because the Lucent Blade is a 35% damage buff, and the bubble is a 35% buff. So these two are just gonna cancel each other out. The only thing I would say though, is you're still gonna get that recharge rate, but obviously for that to work, we can't use tractor. So this is the thing with it. Not so much for sword. So this is where you start using range weapons, a sniper or a grenade launcher. So for a good example, it's Truth Teller. It's going to be up and coming mountaintop basically. It's not as good as mountaintop, but it's like a substitute. You know, it's one of the next best things for that sort of playstyle. So we can show it with that. So obviously we get our super. Now, like I said, we're not using Oppressive Darkness, but obviously I could have used that as a debuff and then sworded. But this video is more for what's coming up after November rather than now. I know new builds are going to be used, etc. But like I said, this is just what we're working with right now. So, same again, we're going to get this major weak. So this would be more like, you know, on a Grandmaster or something. So that's the damage it does base. That's relatively what it's doing. I'm not talking about numbers too much, just visually. Okay. But then we're going to do a bubble. And we get our cell. Our cell from the major. Throw it at the boss. Refresh weapons. Track the cannon buff. And then now look at the damage. And that cell is still up. And not only that, we rebuff the debuff. Okay? And as you can see, this build will be insane. Especially with something like Truth Teller. I mean, it depends on the boss you're fighting. But generally, a grenade launch is good pretty much anywhere in the game. It's not as good as Mountaintop because you can miss like so. You can shoot through his legs. Right? It's easier to miss with something like this, but like I say, that'll be that sort of playstyle. If snipers get a buff in November, we don't know, then you could use something like energy sniper. That's a god roll energy sniper that you've got. Maybe a trophy hunter. I can't remember when they're getting sunset. I don't think it's coming out in November. So something like that. Anything, you know, that you use at range that's really good. So that's more for endgame, but that was the build for the Titan there. And finally on to the Hunter last. So we're going to speed it up just a little bit because the video's taken a little longer than what I wanted it to. But same again, we're going to show you the best way of stacking debuffs, buffs and the cells to get that, you know, pinnacle damage. So on a Hunter, debuffs are everywhere. You can get a debuff pretty much on all the Nightstalker trees. But it's what's the most useful one for something like this playstyle. Now this is not talking about the neutral play of the classes, because the neutral play of the classes are strong in different ways. Like this is middle tree is strong in different ways, bottom tree is exceptionally strong in different ways, skipping stuff, and super is really good. Top tree is still good though. Okay, I want to explain why. So the difference between top and bottom tree. So top tree is a more of a traditional style tether where the tether has more range, it lasts longer for that particular one tether. Okay? With bottom tree, it's a short range tether that doesn't last as long, but you can spam it more. You can spam it a good amount of times at a boss and do massive damage because they buffed Mobius Quiver back when they did. Not only that, it's got other stuff going on, but I'm not talking about its neutral game. Just the tether itself. When you're wanting to do damage with a weapon and you're having to spam your tether over and over, that's wasting time. If you're specifically wanting to write, I want to sword this boss, if you're just tethering over and over, you know, oh, I'll do a bit of sword, then I'll do a tether, then I'll do a sword, then I'll do a tether, you're going to get stomped by the boss. You're doing too much messing about. At that point, it's better to go top tree. A good example of that would be when I done, or for myself, when I done Shattered Throne, the Ogre boss. It was better off just to go top tree. So I could do that, then go in and do what I wanted to do with weapon wise. Just more uptime on your weapons. You know, this is a different super entirely, really. They still give a 30% damage debuff, both of them. They're both debuffs. They still work in the same way, just lengths of time and stuff. Middle tree also has a debuff, but I'm not going to cover it in this video because it just wouldn't be useful in what we're doing. The flawless execution or the shattering strike, it only lasts 2 or 3 seconds to get like damage in. It's just not long enough. It needs to be longer, this. But it's only activated via a precision shot, so they've got to balance it somehow, I guess. But I'm not covering it in the video. So, top tree tether, that's our debuff. That's what we picked. Then we want a damage buff, same as prior to the Titan. We're using Lucent Blade, which is going to be on my boots. So that's the 35% damage buff, which stack them with tether. Okay? They're stacking because it's 1 buff, 1 debuff. Then we got the cell as well, the additive. So the mods are, you need a couple of void, like I say, 1 arc piece at least, and then one of them can be general with a global reach. You also need a way of getting charge of light, just like on the Titan. So we've got shield break charge in this situation. If you've got a situation where taking charge, we better use that. If you've got a situation where another way of getting charge of light is easier, use that, and what have you. Not empowered finisher though, because you lose super energy. So that one, don't stay away from that one. For what we're doing with this at least, as it relies on you having your super. Then we got power Rasputin on, of course. So mixture of void and arc. That's what we've got on there, and 1 general. That could be solar, for example. Then we have a weapon on that can generate a cell, just like before, and then we're testing it with guillotine again. Okay. So we'll get our super first. So this in action. Again, I'll do a test of just 1 sword swing. The numbers are going to be inconsistent across all 3 characters because I'm at different light levels at different points, and I cannot be bothered to sort of optimize all that and give you numbers on the screen, whatnot. That's not going to... The numbers are numbers, but you can overwhelm somebody with numbers. Just if you show them visually, this is what this does, and it's strong, then they're going to say, okay, it's strong, right? So, base 13481, you know, similar to what we had before. We'll get our charge of light. We all can get ×2 like we did on the Titan, if you didn't say that. Break the shield twice. Taking charge can do this, just pick 2 orbs up. The same thing. Now we get our cell going. Obviously this is a Seraph weapon. That's our cell. We'll throw it at the boss. Do a tether. 1 swing, a lot of numbers, and then we can just use keyed. The cell's still up, notice, and the tether. So we can just... Cell's still up, so we're still gaining from it, and it's still up. You can see the benefit of that cell just staying there, even when we're losing my tether, even when I'm losing keyed, which proc twice because we had ×2 charge of light. The cell's still benefiting us, and 10% might not sound a lot, but to each individual hit of this sword, or pellets of a shotgun, or whatever it might be, that's a boost over that time that you otherwise wouldn't have, and it could be the difference between solo 1 phase and something, or not solo 1 phase and something. That's the thing with solo play, it requires you to be on point with everything you do. If it's sloppy, then you're gonna have to do another phase. You're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to do that. You might be a wipe because of what you've done. So all these things to consider. But these are just good builds that you could use after November. There is going to be stasis, so people are going to be using that. But these are still ways of auto stacking a buff and a debuff and the cell all together in one. And if guillotine's still viable, which it will be, there's an exotic version of it sort of thing coming out for anti-barrier shields. But this is the beauty of this one, is it's a legendary. It isn't getting sunset till 1360 power, so we're still going to be using it for ages. Okay. And even if there's a new sword that comes along, you can just use it with that. Like the exotic one, for example. So that was overall the basics of how debuffs, buffs stack, how the cell isn't a buff or a debuff and it adds, and all the different things you can do in all 3 classes. The video is a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but that was the gist of it. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.